The transfer portal always surprises, but losing your starting quarterback to the portal, that one shocked me.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. I've been covering Boston College for over a decade. If you're looking for Boston College news, analysis, and details on your Eagles, you are in the right spot. Locked On Boston College is a free daily Boston College podcast available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Today, we have a special live episode. When there's big news breaking, I'm not going to make you wait for the morning. I'm going to tell you about it now. Dylan Lonergan enters the portal. We're going to give you our thoughts on where the portal is at right now. Where does BC go after losing their starting quarterback? What does this loss mean? And let's talk about the whole details. Now, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get into the middle of the action with this season by visiting FanDuel and placing your live bets all season long. Of course, this is the biggest news of the offseason so far. And to get into it, well, Kenyatta Watson might be as big. But to talk about it, we're bringing in Mitchell Wolf. Mitch, you couldn't stay away, could you?
You know, the way you led into this segment just reminded me of the concept that has become a refrain among, I would say, mostly millennial Twitter. And it's like, man, what I would give to live in precedented times.
Yeah.
And that's really just been this week of being a BC sports fan, where it's like, hey, we're getting football GM. Hey, we're maxing out revenue share. We're getting tons of money from gifts or whatever. And our starting quarterback's entering the portal. It's like, okay, a lot of whiplash here. The monkey's paw of BC athletics curls its finger again, and we are just on a roller coaster of.
I wish I could show the fans the metrics for my website. During the season, it was like, I was like, wow, are we playing a game today? Nothing, we've got these articles up. No one's reading it. The last 4 days, it has been insane. It's like a month's worth of hits in like 4 days because people are talking about this, and it's not stopping now because Dylan Lonergan is in the portal. Now, some people were yelling at me about this. I was surprised that Dylan Lonergan entered. He announced it on Instagram. I did not see this coming. I figured he had a starting spot. He didn't do enough in my opinion. He didn't do enough this year to like get like a big school to go, whoa, we need to get him. We're going to peel him away from BC. And I feel like he had, a coach that he knew and a system that would work for him. But here we go. He's gone. Mitch, what were you thinking?
I'm of the same opinion as you with that. I thought you had all of the conditions necessary to basically keep your quarterback, in that, Grayson James is out of eligibility, so you don't really have competition for him. You have Shaker Rice coming off a redshirt year. You've got two true freshman QBs coming in, so there's nobody competing with him for the job. But and he played decently well, but he also didn't light the world on fire, so you didn't have to necessarily worry about some big school coming and poaching him. Or at least you didn't think of that immediately. You weren't like this, like it's a foregone conclusion. This is a Fernando Mendoza at Cal situation or whatever. But so then again, this is such a surprise because that didn't happen. You look at him, you're like, okay, he, again, like you said, coach he's familiar with, coach that recruited him to Alabama in the first place, a system that Lonergan does fit in. That was kind of the whole conceit of the idea, is that what Lonergan does well, this quick passing game, this understanding defenses before the snap, getting into the right play, that all works perfectly with O'Brien. And you're like, okay, this year was tough. He dealt with some injuries. The offensive line had some problems. There was no running game. The defense was the worst in the Power Four, arguably one of the worst in the FBS. You figure next year they get a little healthier, kind of reconnoiter some of the things on the team. Now we've got this whole revenue sharing thing, which we'll talk about. You hope they can invest the rest of the team, put more support around him, and he can continue to develop. Because when Lonergan came in, you're like, okay, the first year, at the beginning of the year, we were like, oh my God, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. And it eventually kind of petered out. But even looking at the long term of it, you say, okay, the first year, it's probably not going to be all roses. He's not going to light the world on fire. There's going to be some hiccups. It's his first year starting. You don't really know what to expect from him. You hope that he's got 3 years when he comes here. He's going to develop over these 3 years. And by the time he's a redshirt senior, like, hey, this guy's a really strong quarterback. He's the leader of the offense. He does everything runs through him, and that's great. So you're not, obviously super broken up about it because, again, like, he was not a perfect, light the world on fire quarterback. But it's like, well, now what? Because now BC has 3 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster. You have Shaker Rice is the only one who's played, and he redshirted this past year. Femi Babalola is coming in, who I really like. Anthony Kohler is coming in, who I kind of like. But both of those guys absolutely need time to develop. They cannot be thrown into the fire immediately. And those are really the only quarterbacks you have on the roster who you feel comfortable about playing in meaningful action. So this really throws a wrench into everything because, again, like this is how the portal is now these days. And I don't want to get into the whole diatribe of how it's all different now because it is what it is. And it's going to keep changing every year, so it's hard to pin down. And this is what makes it so hard to predict is because every year the meta of the sport is changing. And even the meta of BC and how they handle these kind of things is changing with this revenue sharing, new GM. So it's frustrating just because then it's hard to feel secure about predicting anything with this team.
Right. I think Mitch and I, we, not on the board, but when we talk and we talk offline, we had ideas of guys that would enter the portal, and you can get the vibes. Like you saw a guy like Ashton McShane. He entered the portal. We kind of saw that coming. He didn't play all that much this year. It made a lot of sense. He's not from this area.
And that one, it's like very clear because it's very crystal clear because he comes in last year's true freshman. He's recruited from Texas. Recruited by Ray Brown too. And the quarterback coach keeps him here. And he plays a little bit. It's like, okay, like, hey, this guy's got a future with this program. They changed the defensive backs coach. New guy comes in. McShane, I think he has some injuries early in the year, but he just does not see the field almost at all, to the point that he redshirts. He plays a little at the end of the year, but he's not a factor on the team when they had so many injuries at the cornerback room. So you look at that, you say, okay, he's clearly fallen out of favor with this new coaching staff. It is what it is. He might want to transfer, play someplace closer to home where he can play more because, in theory, next year he could still be blocked by Sire Torrance, maybe Amari Jackson. They clearly like Ashton Cunningham. So, maybe it's okay. He doesn't really have a path to player, so that makes sense. The Lonergan thing, it's like, okay, like he could transfer, but he could transfer. It's like, again, anybody can transfer, but you're just kind of like, I don't really see
a path.
A path. Like I don't really see what he gets out of it. I don't really see what others why. Like I'm sure other schools below BC, like in the G5, would be like, oh, sick, this guy, like this would be great. But I don't. Given that he's starting in a Power 4 program, like why would you move down a level when you were fine? Like you weren't terrible. You weren't Joseph Filardi.
Right.
Yeah, you're fine. Like and you're a young player. You have a chance to develop.
And we don't know the financial ends of it too. But I would imagine he would just from guessing, he probably makes more at a school like BC than he would if he went to like Marshall or whatever. Right.
From a raw standpoint, I'm sure he'd make like a bigger ratio of whatever their cap is, if you will. But yeah, I definitely think he would make more at BC than he would at almost any G5 program. Probably definitely on the lower end of a Power 4 program, for being honest.
So we use the word autopsy on our show a lot. We do autopsies on seasons. We do autopsies on all sorts of things. Talk about what is your final thoughts? And we're going to talk about where BC goes from here on the Dylan Lonergan era. Do you think there was potential that we just didn't get to see? Do you think we saw the best of it? Like what we saw, were you impressed? Kind of like what your
So I think there was, I guess to kind of stick with the metaphor, there was kind of a pre-existing condition in that, and it's appropriate in that, like he had some injuries this year. Like we talk about how after the first game against Fordham, he was in a boot for at least a day. Before the Michigan State game, there was a report that he had turf toe for most of the season he was battling with. The thumb thing against Syracuse, that's just kind of a fluky thing, whatever. So that's kind of affecting. I'm not sure how much that really affected his play, but you saw him play better down the stretch against Georgia Tech. Had some moments here and there, so maybe that was a problem. But with Lonergan, and again, like this is BC, like it's not really our position to like turn solid, talented players away. But I think even if you maxed out what Lonergan could be as a quarterback in terms of what he can control, which is, his ability to read defenses, his ability to make good decisions, his ability to, I'd say make accurate throws, but that's kind of you have it or you don't for the most part. There's a few exceptional cases, but the exception proves the rule there. But at the end of the day, he didn't have the strongest arm. So I don't think he was going to have I know we said this earlier, but like there wasn't going to be a Matt Ryan ceiling for Dylan Lonergan, I don't think, just because of there wasn't this incredible arm that allows you to be a truly transcendent quarterback at the college level and then use
he
that.
he didn't have the physical tools. Like,
No,
he
but
wasn't.
he's not the biggest guy. He just didn't have the zip, velocity, ability to drive. Again, could make a lot of nice throws. Not taking that away from him, but not gonna have those really wow special throws that, for all his warts, Phil Dracovic had that some, and it was very inconsistent. But there were times where it's like, whoa, that's rare. There's not a lot of guys that can do that, and obviously it really fell off for him because of. If you combine Dylan Lonergan and Phil Dracovic, you'd have a really good quarterback, basically.
Can we do that?
The science is we're getting there. We'll be there hopefully soon. That's the new transfer portal, transfer of consciousness.
Oh, God. All right. In a moment, Mitch and I are going to talk about what's next for BC in terms of the quarterback position, because you got to figure something out, because right now the room's pretty thin. We'll talk about that in just a moment. NFL Sundays move fast, and one big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. I love looking at the prop bets when you're going live, where I think I took Kayshawn Boutte with like 40 yards and Hunter Henry with 30 yards, and then Drake May for 200 yards, and I added those all together in a parlay. Boom. I got my odds. It was good. I added a 25% profit boost on top of that. It was a great night for me. And you can find all that. It was so easy to do on FanDuel. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. With FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black of Eagle Insider, joined by Mitchell Wolf of also of Eagle Insider. And I want to thank all of our everydayers and all of you out there in our chat today. Thank you so much. We don't usually react to the chats. That's kind of not what we're doing here. It's just a live show. We wanted to get our reactions out there fast, but I do appreciate you. I'll try to respond after we go off the air. Now,
if we were responding to chats, we'd be here for hours.
And it gets all disjointed, and people who listen on podcasts, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Kind of sounds weird.
Honestly, you need a producer to do that.
Okay, correct. And unfortunately, we don't have that. Now, your quarterback room is Shaker Reisick, who's played, and I don't want to hear right now from anyone who watched that and said, yeah, he's the guy. I don't know how you can make any sort of evaluation on anything he's done, because he played all garbage time. And two freshmen, Femi Babalola and Anthony Kohler. You got to have four quarterbacks in your quarterback room. You cannot go into next season with, three, and you cannot go in with three freshmen. So the obvious choice here is that you're going to have to go in the portal. And I got to say right now, and we were talking about this off the air, the quarterback room in the portal, or the quarterback pool, is pretty thin. Things are developing all the time, though.
The portal hasn't even technically opened and doesn't for another month, 3 weeks. Yeah.
I have to wonder, and I'll throw this out to you too. You're going to see guys in the portal, but a lot of the guys that you're seeing announce are the ones looking for spots. I wonder if a lot of guys are not announcing, but are making deals behind the scenes because everything is unethical and weird. And you're not going to hear about them until they sign. And then they're like, oh, I'm in the portal. Do not contact, which is what their code is for do not contact me because I've signed with somebody already. Mm-hmm. So that's the case. But let's talk about BC's perspective on this. What do they need to do?
It's pretty simple. You have to go out and find a quarterback who you can feel decent about starting this year. Because I don't think they feel that way about Shaker yet. I think he can get there, but I think they need to at least have him compete with somebody, and somebody who has some starting experience. Because even if Shaker were to win the job and they feel really good about it, Shaker is a good bit smaller than Lonergan. And given how much Lonergan got hurt this year, I would be even more worried about that with Shaker Reisick, just because he's a smaller quarterback. When you're a smaller player and you're playing against bigger players, you get hurt more often. It is what it is. And then you could say the same thing about Kohler. He's a bit slight. He's pretty young. Babalola is listed at 6'4", 220. I have some doubts about that, just given how lanky he is. But again, I like him a lot as a prospect, but I think he definitely needs time to develop, especially as an O'Brien quarterback and what O'Brien wants for his quarterbacks. And what I mean by that is that something that I've been noticing over the last month or so, and this was watching Dylan versus Grayson, watching Shaker and remembering what I watched him in high school, watching Femi in high school, watching Anthony Kohler in high school, and watching DJ Bordeaux, who he decommitted and ended up somewhere else. One thing that O'Brien really wants in his quarterbacks, I think, is that you need to see a high level of lower body explosiveness. And what I mean by that is that you need to have quick feet and smooth hips. And for a quarterback, that shows up in your ability to get into your drop back quickly, move in the pocket quickly, and not get sacked. And make your decisions quickly, because in order to be an accurate quarterback, one of the biggest things is you have to have your feet and your hips and your shoulders aligned. That's how you make accurate throws. And when you have players that they don't have that lower body explosiveness, it takes them longer to set up in the pocket, which means the throws are late and they are inaccurate, and that leads to sacks and turnovers. So this is where I think I saw the biggest difference between Lonergan and James, and even guys like Femi, Kohler versus Bordeaux. Lonergan, I thought, really had that, and I thought that why he was a good fit. So you need to find another guy that's good at that. Shaker has that a bit, I think, but again, he still needs to develop because he's so young and inexperienced. So right now, of the players who are listed in the portal at quarterback on 247 Sports, the top one, quote unquote, is Braden Fowler-Nicolosi, who was previously at Colorado State. I lived in Fort Collins for 3 years. I watched a lot of Braden Fowler-Nicolosi, actually. He's not a power forward quarterback, even for a program that's kind of down and out like BC. It's funny because he said he was getting offers, but came back to Colorado State and then wasn't as good and got benched. So interesting stories there. But again, we don't know who is going to be in the portal. There's a lot of names. There's going to be a lot of names. There's always a ton of quarterbacks in the portal. Most of them right now are like FCS guys looking to come up. So you need to go out and find a guy that can run this system that is probably more experienced than a guy who's not. Like, you probably don't want a guy like Lonergan, who, when I say that, I mean Lonergan came in here without much starting experience, without many career dropbacks, basically none in meaningful play. You need to find a guy who can come in and start immediately. And again, maybe he's not the long-term answer. Maybe this is a one-year rental situation, but you need a guy that you can at least feel confident saying going into week one, whoever it is, I forget exactly. Is it Cincinnati? It's week one next year.
I have no idea.
It's Cincinnati or Rutgers, whoever it is. You need a guy that's okay. We can put this guy out there as a power forward quarterback, and we're not going to be completely sunk as an offense. And obviously, that's easier said than done.
Cincinnati's the 5th, but I'm going to probably guess they play the week before that, maybe. And if they play the week before that,
yeah, so they're going to open with an ACC game then.
Yep.
Because Maine is like September 27th or something.
Yep.
Or 20, yeah. So they'll be opening with the ACC game. Sick. Great.
All right. So that Mitch is giving you the details on what kind of quarterback. Now I'm going to give you a hot take. You're going to disagree with me, but that's fine. We're not here to just get along. This guy, as I've said before on the show, he knew coming in that things had to change at BC in terms of the financial impact of what they're doing with the rev share, NIL, things like that. We got the news on Monday of him being hired, and what was it? 24 hours later, we get the email from Brad Bates.
Oh boy,
Blake James from Blake James saying that they're going to up the revenue share and they're going to, the matching thing and all that good stuff. I don't believe that Kenyatta Watson's coming here knowing that they're going to just keep doing things the same way at BC. They need to make a splash. They need to do something that opens eyes. And so I mentioned before that it might be behind the scenes, but we both agree that stuff happens everywhere, right? Like your stuff that's not on 247, stuff that's, behind doors and between contacts and all that kind of stuff.
Back channeling in college football?
Never, right? Well, I think that Watson's going to want a big name. And the name I go back to would be huge. It might be a pipe dream, and Mitch is going to bang his head on his desk. But what about Deuce Knight? This was a 5-star recruit who went to you've lost me. And fine, whatever.
No, that's fine.
He was committed to Notre Dame, flipped to Auburn. If you look at his Twitter page right now, it's a love letter to Kenyatta Watson. It's like 5 or 6 straight tweets about Kenyatta Watson. There's a new coach there at Auburn that wasn't his coach that he committed to. And I've heard buzz that Golish, I say his name, Alex Golish, right?
Yeah.
Wants to bring his quarterback from USF to Auburn, possibly.
Byron Brown. Yep.
Which would then boot Knight
It would
out,
delay Knight by another year. I think he only played in one game this year, so
which he had like 6 touchdowns in that. I know
it was against Mercer, so let's.
But whatever, right? This would be almost kind of like, and it's a bad analogy because it ended up flaming out, but like that Phil Dracovic moment, right?
Yeah.
So if BC is serious about spending, if BC is serious about treating this team like a serious football program, getting a Deuce Knight would make a lot of sense. Now, I know that there's a million things of reasons why you don't believe that'll happen. I get that. But I don't think this chances of this happening is zero. I don't
disagree with you. I don't think it's a non-zero chance. And I don't disagree with the theory of it. It's just me struggling to wrap my head around BC getting a 5-star transfer from an SEC school. I digress on that point. I don't necessarily disagree with the theory of it, because you are absolutely right. Like, Kenyatta Watson would not be coming here without this plan to remake Boston College football, arguably athletics, into a program that is with the modern era, because it hasn't been for the last however many years. Let's call it 5, because that's really when college football, a lot of it significantly changed. So I don't disagree with that point. I don't necessarily disagree with the point about you need to make a splash QB. Absolutely, no question. Just not sure. Again, hard for me to wrap my head around Knight specifically. I'm not sure if we want to take a break before I get into this last point, but I think there's a kind of a team building theory discussion that might emanate from this that maybe we can kick to after the break, because I think it's going to be a bit of a long point.
All right, we'll go back to that we'll get to Mitch's point in just a moment. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories, because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. I have 2 kids of my own. My kids' grandparents are in 2 different spots, both over an hour away. They love to see them playing soccer, dance, karate, all that good stuff. Using Aura, I can send that directly to them. They love it. I get comments all the time like, AJ, I love that picture you sent me of your son. It's amazing. So for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames. Named number 1 by Wirecutter by using promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's auraframes.com. Promo code COLLEGE. The deal is exclusive to listeners and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Wrapping things up here at Locked On Boston College. This is AJ Black, joined by Mitchell Wolf. Thank you all. And if you're looking for another show, check out Locked On ACC. They're getting into a lot of the playoff talk, and I'm sure they're complaining about Miami on the outside looking in, because I can see their host constantly complaining about it. I can't blame them, though. If we were in his shoes too, we would be doing the same thing, right?
Has he considered beating Louisville?
Yeah. But let's talk about what you were saying with the team building. Go ahead.
So all of this stuff about the revenue sharing being maxed out, the gift to the program, the increasing support for the football program, athletics in general, it's all great. When that was announced, I think a lot of people interpreted that as BC is now a leader in this space. That is not what this means, in my opinion. This is BC coming in, basically buying into the high roller room or whatever. They are on a skin tight budget, because everybody else is in the Power Four pretty much has already been operating in this space, maxing out revenue share, investing a ton in their programs. BC is finally getting in the room. They are not a leader in that room yet by any means. And they probably never will be, if we're being honest. But the analogy also that I made on Twitter is that BC, if BC football and athletics was a car, and they are like a race car, the car was broken. The engine was not there. It was not running. It was not able to really participate in the race. There is now an engine in the car. We don't know how fast it is. It's the bare bones are there. You are met the bare minimum you are this tall to ride this ride. You might not enjoy it. It might be a bumpy ride because you're too small. So this is going to take time for BC to really get invested to the point that they are going to be able to be competitive at this level of football. Now, the other part of that is that there's kind of this negative view where it's like, oh, they haven't been willing to spend before. And I think that's because that was how they were operating before. I think they probably wanted to spend more, but the administration wasn't letting them for this one reason or another. But that doesn't mean that the players they're going to go out and get are going to be the best in the market, because the players who are the best in the market in the portal are going to go like places like Georgia, like Ohio State, like Michigan, like Indiana, Oregon, whatever. I'm not saying BC is going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel with FCS and D2 players like they were last year, but the majority of their transfer portal class is probably going to be closer to that than it is going to be the class that Indiana brings in, or Oregon brings in, or Michigan brings in, or Oklahoma brings in, or whatever. BC is still operating at the bottom of the Power Four, and they're now saying, okay, we want to be competitive, and that's great, but that's going to take time. And this brings me to my quarterback specific point. And I know when we've talked about this before with Dylan Lonergan, is we talked about how I think this program does, like, to get this program to somewhere that is relevant, to get them to make an ACC championship run and get them to the playoff, they probably need a transcendent quarterback. The problem is that transcendent quarterback is exceptionally hard to find. Some schools never find them. This was interesting. Max Brosmer, he started for the Vikings this past week at quarterback. He was the first quarterback in the history of the University of Minnesota. University of Minnesota has been playing football forever. They had never had a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Wow.
And Minnesota's had one national championship back in the day. Granted, it was a different game, but it's like they've had players, but they've never had a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yep.
That's crazy. So some programs, you just never find that. BC has had some great quarterbacks, and that's fantastic. And they've been able to have good seasons, but haven't been able to really make it mean something in a long time. So I think that's one way you can go about it. It's okay. If we try to make a transcendent quarterback, that's great. We can do all we want. My thinking of this, based on kind of how this season went, I worry about how brittle your program becomes when you hit your wagon to needing to hit on just one number on the roulette wheel. If you're hitting on 17 or whatever. And I wonder is it better to build this program in a way such that you have a very strong roster consistently? You've got good trenches. You've got some solid skill players on both sides. And I think this is where Bill O'Brien can be really good, where it's like you can keep bringing in quarterbacks and say, okay, like we can get you to a certain point. One of you as a high schooler, more so high schooler than transfer portal guys, maybe if you have it work out where it's like, okay, we've got this really good roster, we're quarterback away, then we go all in. But I think it's better if you build the roster that way, and then you go on, you kind of keep cycling the quarterbacks. Like, okay, we'll eventually, if we keep doing this, we'll have solid rosters, we'll get the quarterback eventually. Or once you have the rest of the roster set and you're spending your rev share and your NIL on building that good roster to essentially almost make your team quarterback proof, where the quarterback is the icing on the cake. That's what takes you to the next level. So that's a lot of rambling, but I think that that's kind of my disagreement with you about basically the Deuce Knight thing, where it's like, I don't know if that's necessarily the best way. The other side of the coin, though, is that after this season, like you said, Bill O'Brien's kind of got to make a splash. I think expecting a very good season next year based on the schedule is a bit of is not a realistic way to go about things, because next year's schedule is hard. So I don't really see a very realistic path to getting past 6-6, and that might even be a bit of a stretch. I think you look at 2027 and you're like, okay, that might be a year where they can break through. If they keep the guys, if they develop this team and things break right, that might be the year where they can finally break through. But Bill O'Brien might be saying, hey, like, I don't have that long, because if next year goes not even like if they go like 3-9 or 4-8, like they have to be really competitive in a lot of games and have some bad breaks to where it's like, okay, O'Brien's safe for another year. So that might be, like you said, like they've got to find this quarterback and make a big splash and hope that he's the guy that can kind of drag the team along with him. And that might be where they are, where they have to go all in and make a big bet because they're in dire straits right now.
Yeah, it's not an easy answer. I mean, I look at, what Duke did. Duke brought in Darian Mansa, and they're in the ACC championship. And I know they had more talent there.
Their defense is also terrible, and they're 7-5, and they got lucky based on the ACC tiebreakers. Let's call a spade a spade.
Wouldn't you like to be 7-5?
Yeah,
and be
no.
lucky, though?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yes. I would love to be lucky once in my life as a BC
right,
fan.
right. So,
but I think but I mean, I think that's the Darian Mensah way. But then I think honestly, you look at Miami, who kind of built their roster from the ground up, and then threw in Carson Beck, and they still lost 2 games for sure. They, the things break a different way. Maybe they're in the ACC championship, but even you look at Virginia, where they were kind of they kind of did what BC is doing, where they just invested and went all in on like everything. Even their quarterback, it was kind of a question mark, because it's like, okay, we're losing Colandrea, who's been okay. We're bringing in this Chandler Morris, who wasn't really good at the Power 4, was great in the G5, and now he's good in solid in the Power 4 again. So a lot of these are.
Would you rather see them spend money on like a good G5 quarterback?
Like if you can get one, for sure.
I don't know what I don't know what the buying rate is.
Right, but I would have to look around to like see which ones there would be. But like, I mean, to return to the Chandler Morris thing, like he left North Texas, and Drew Mestamaker, the coach is Eric. Drew Mestamaker, the quarterback there, who was like a walk-on basically, who like hadn't played since middle school or something, and Eric Morris turned him into a great quarterback and they're probably both leaving for Oklahoma State this year, because that's where Morris is going to be the head coach. He's probably bringing Mestamaker with him. You look at a guy like John Mateer, who was at Washington State, and then went with his offense coordinator Ben Arbuckle to Oklahoma. You look at a guy like Cam Ward, who it was last year, but like bumped up a lot of places, like bumped up from FCS to Washington State to Miami.
Yep.
Yeah, so you can find those guys for sure, but I want it. It's kind of like what quarterback are you going to be getting from? I'd have to look at the specific names to see who would be available. Because sure, like that. One thing I'm wondering is about, like, I guess this name kind of comes to mind, is that Joey Aguilar, who went from App State to UCLA, then to Tennessee over the last basically calendar year because of the whole Nico thing. They might be trying to elevate their quarterback position. Like, and he's a guy who ran this kind of funky offense at Tennessee. Do you think you could like take him for an SEC school? Or he's like, if they're pushing him out because they want to get like a much higher profile quarterback, it's like, hey, come, you don't want to play in the SEC? Play a reasonable schedule and put up some numbers. We can do that for you. That's the way that's one way you could go about it. That requires Tennessee pushing him out, which is a question mark. But again, like, I'd have to go look at some G5 quarterbacks, which, I mean, that honestly sounds like a great time. Would love to do that.
But I think we can both agree that BC needs to look at this differently than they've done in years past. Like, they're in a different spot where they can look at it differently.
And that is kind of the other part of this, is that everything is so different than it was before that it's hard to even like look in the past and say this is instructive of the future, because everything is changing. Everything has changed. It's changing like on a week-to-week basis, day-to-day basis almost. So we're going to kind of have to wait and see. I mean, obviously this is a momentous week in the program where you've kind of been we've been on this huge roller coaster where it's like, oh, this is great, and now everything's terrible again. Because BC has, I don't think it's unfair to say they have the worst quarterback room in the Power 4 and the worst linebacker room in the Power 4 now, based on the transfers. So got to go out and fix it.
And yep, we'll be talking all about all that. So, the season's over, but it feels even more chaotic now. At least during the season, we're like, well, they're playing Clemson, they're going to lose. we don't know what's going to happen now. So, like, this is going to be a fascinating.
What was you saw the tweet I quote tweeted earlier about how Russian literature is just going out and finding and being in a state of despair and going out and finding a deeper state of despair.
That's ACC football.
And I meant, honestly, it's really BC, but I was like, it's kind of the whole ACC, if we're being honest.
Totally, right, because you got Miami feeling that way right now, too. So anyways, Mitch, where can people find you?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolf, WOLFE on Twitter. You can check out my work at Eagle Insider. We've got all the film reviews up from this season, finally done. I've talked about this on Twitter and on the board, and it's even more relevant now. My big offseason project is going to be a super detailed, in-depth dive into what does NIL mean for BC? What are they doing? How does it relate to their peer schools? And is that a good strategy moving forward? And it's going to be a long project. It's going to come out in multiple parts. I barely started working on it, but I want to give this to BC fans, because even for me, like I don't know as much as I should about this space, and especially when it's becoming a bigger part of what BC's program is, that I think that if I put this out and do this research and we show this to people, everybody will be operating on a better understanding of how this program is working now. And that will better allow us to, one, set realistic expectations for what they're going to do. And then if the program does not meet those expectations, hold their feet to the fire and say, you're not doing enough. This is the wrong way you're going about it, because we're not competitive. But if you can change it, we could be. So that's my big offseason project. There'll be a lot of other smaller ones that are more minuscule, more granular. That'll be, Reed Harris scouting report is one. Hopefully he stays. Jeez. I mean, I'm kind of just going to wait until the portal closes again for some of those, because knowing me, I'll write like a really long one about somebody and then they'll hit the portal the next day. So
Totally,
I want to
right.
keep the powder dry on some of those.
And yeah, and so I also want to let you guys know for the site and for the show. Sorry, I have a couple pokers in the fire right now for some guests to come on. I don't want to talk about it until I actually get them on, but I think you'll enjoy that. I'm actually kind of glad neither of them were. I had them scheduled and things just didn't work out. I'm actually kind of glad this week because it's just been crazy, and I honestly want to talk about this and not have guests on at this point because there's just so much to talk about. Again, we will go live if other stuff happens. If they land, we probably won't hear about a quarterback, but if it happens, we'll talk about it. If there's coaching changes, I'll go live. I will do the best that I can to get in front of this camera and talk to you guys. So thank you all. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. Check out all our work over at Eagle Insider. Slam that like button and subscribe to our channel before you head out if you're listening to this on YouTube. And we'll see you again on Monday for another episode of Locked On Boston College. Your team every day.